and welcome to The Straw Hat with Rabbi David Wolkenfeld and Rabbanit Goldie Guy. We are the official podcast of Anshe Shalom B'nai Israel Congregation, an Orthodox synagogue in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois.
So this week is Parashat Beshalach. It's the Torah portion in which the Song of the Sea is read, and correspondingly, it's the Haftorah in which Devorah's song, her victory song, is read. So it's a Shabbat Shirah, a Shabbat of poetry, a Shabbat of triumphant songs, and it gives us an opportunity to speak a little bit about Devorah, who's really a really unique figure in Tanakh, and she's become, I think, also a really important role model and sort of, I guess, character in halakhic literature as well. So I wanted to make sure we talk about Devorah as a person in Sefer Shoftim, in Tanakh, and also as an example, as a precedent in halakhic literature.
Right, so the book of Shoftim describes Devorah as a prophetess and that she was a leader in Israel, and she sat under the famous Tomer Devorah, the palm tree of Devorah, and the people like Bnei Israel would come for judgment to her. They'd come and she would sit in judgment. But she also plays a key role, I think, in the battle because she has this kind of shared leadership with Barak ben Avinoam, who's the military commander. But she's the one who calls it to him and says, it's kind of time to call your troops up and go to war with the Plishtim. Right? Go do that now. And Barak says to her, only if you come with me. And she says, sure. But you should know then that it's not going to be only by your hand that we will win this victory. It's going to be in the hands of a woman who we find out later is Yael. Possibly also Devorah, I guess, in joining this leadership, but it's Yael, right? Yael, the one who ultimately brings down the mighty Sisera, the captain of the Philistine army. Is the
implication that Barak should have been willing to fight without her, or?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of this push and pull with Devorah, and especially in declaring her might and leadership, and in the tone of her song, right? Like, you couldn't have done this without me, right? We wouldn't have done this until Devorah rose up a leader in Israel. She has this very triumphant tone of, you couldn't have done it without me as the leader, and also without. And it's interesting in this verse of her, or when she summons Barak to say, you're not going to be able to do this without another woman, right? You can't do this alone. Especially as you're telling me, right? You won't go without me.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that he's being punished for relying on her. It could just be.
Oh, I don't think it's a punishment. Yeah.
It's her continuing, she's proud of herself and of other women that they're able to bring about this victory that Barak couldn't do on his own. Yeah.
He says, if you go with me, I'll go. And if not, I won't go. He kind of knows that she has strength in her leadership that he needs. And she says, okay, very well, I'll go. I don't know. Yeah. It's an interesting model of shared leadership in a way.
Say more. What's the shared leadership?
I mean, if he's saying I can't do it without you, he's stating explicitly, right? I'm the military captain, but I'm not going to go.
What's he bringing to the table? What's shared about this leadership?
Well, he's the captain. He is commanding the army, right? I don't think she has that military experience, but it's interesting that he's saying, well, I need you as backup. I need you as the person who's going to be my support. And she kind of calls the shots also, right? She says to him, this is the day that you need to go, right? This is when God's going to deliver Sisera into your hands. God will be with you. She's kind of his spiritual reassurance and backbone there.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then he commands the army, right? She's not doing that, but
Right. He's actually doing the fighting, and he has the soldiers who are under his command, but she's telling him where to go, and she's giving him the confidence that he's going to be victorious, that he'll be successful, that God is on his side and will bring about a victory.
It's kind of reminding me of the Ark having to go out into battle with the people. Right, you kind of need your spiritual presence with you on the battlefield to know it's not just a military endeavor. It's also, right, you go with God, right? And this is about conquering the land, and you go with God. Okay.
So in halakhic literature, she's also a character, right? She's a precedent. She becomes she was a person, and then she became a precedent. We saw Tosfot, we saw the Rashba, who kind of use her as an example to work through the question of women sitting as judges on courts, which, based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, women don't sit on Batei Din as judges, and yet it seems explicitly, black and white, that she was a judge. She sat under that tree, and she was Shaftat Yisrael. It sounds like she was, adjudicating cases that people brought before her. And we saw a few answers in the Rishonim about why that was okay. Despite working within the assumption, within the frame of reference that women aren't judges, how was Devorah a judge? And we saw a few answers.
Right. So one main answer is to say that she wasn't actually judging. This is the language of the Rashba. The Rashba says Delo shofetet mamish, right? She wasn't actually judging. Ela manheget keshoftim sheshaftu et Yisrael. She was a leader. And there's still an issue with this in this understanding. He continues and says, but even though it says in the Sifri, in the Midrash Halacha, Som tasim alecha melech, right? You're supposed to appoint a king specifically and not a queen. Hatam lo manuota. There they didn't appoint her. Ela nohagin hayu al piha. The problem would be official appointment. But since they were kind of just following her leadership, her advice, and her guidance, that's okay.
That's sort of, I see that as saying what she was doing was no more problematic than the whole entire period of the Shoftim, where we didn't have a king and we just had these Shoftim, these chieftains, who controlled little pieces of territory and small armies and did what they did for a few years, right? And before someone else takes their place on the stage. So she wasn't, when it says that she was shofetet, it wasn't that she was sitting on a court. She was just being a shofet, like all the other Shoftim and Sefer Shoftim, no more, no less. And, that's my read of that language in the Rashba. I don't know. That's what evokes.
Well, then he brings up and says, right, even though it says in the Sifri that it's supposed to be a king and not a queen, right? So that, I don't know if it's drawing a parallel to having a real position of power. And then he kind of waters it down and says it wasn't really, right? They didn't appoint her as a leader. And it's interesting, right? And immediately afterwards, in his second answer, right, his first answer was
maybe that's also because it's Som Tasim, right? Som Tasim Alecha Melech. It's the appointment within the Sifrei, right? It's the appointment that's significant, right? So she wasn't appointed. She kind of without an unofficial way, in a grassroots kind of way, was able to accumulate power and influence.
It can't be, because his first answer is they didn't appoint her. They were just kind of following her lead, but that's in contrast to his second answer, where they say they accepted her as a leader, right? They actually did say you're going to be the guide, but
I don't think that's. I don't think that's.
You don't think that's the contrast?
No, because I think that answer is saying that she can be a judge, even though women as a category invalid to be judges. You can appoint anyone who's invalid to be a judge if all the litigants agree. So it's not. So in other words,
that's not a minui. That's not an appointment. You're saying.
And exactly. If the litigants want somebody who's otherwise invalid judge to be their judge, then that person can be their judge. If both litigants agree, then why not? So if you have someone like Devorah, who's a prophet, is sitting under her tree, so why not? Why wouldn't you have her adjudicate?
I don't know. It sounds like an appointment to me.
I think appointment is like you're the court for this city.
Right.
You're the judge for the city.
Right. You're allowed to choose and to say, I'm going to accept the authority of this person, even though under the broader rules, the technical rules, they wouldn't be eligible.
Right.
But I'm going to waive that.
A relative or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just like a relative can't be a judge, but if they agree that this person can be a good impartial judge, and the litigants can. So that to me, that's really taking it in the direction of no judge, sitting on a court, hearing cases, litigants come forward, and as long as litigants agree that they want this person. So it happened. A lot of litigants wanted her to be their judge, and so they went to her. So.
And that would mean that, right, in certain cases, right, a woman could take on this position of power so long as the people who are taking on that authority agree to it, right? They say, yes, we want this.
Yes, I think so. And then the other stuff we saw in Tosfot, I thought that sort of intriguing idea that she wasn't the judge. She just told everyone what the law was, right? That was the other, right? She's the one who determined the law. She just, she was a scholar. She was the, the Gadol Hador, the one who was really the most authoritative, creative, wisest, most knowledgeable Torah scholar, and so she told everyone what the law was. And then there was somebody else who was, who read her books, as it were, right? They read her Chidushei Torah, and they're the ones who were actually sitting on the court and were applying her Torah knowledge, in actual practical cases, which I thought was also a more intriguing model as well.
It's like a halakhic advisor, right? if they had a question, they'd go back to her and they'd say, okay, what do you think about
yeah.
this, right? The consultant and teacher.
But more so, it's extra consultant is the one who maybe has narrow technical knowledge, and the judges the law best. She knew the law better than anyone else in her generation, maybe, right? Or in her area, she was the one who knew the law best, and so she was the most authentic source for Torah knowledge, I think, and that's what I see in that Tosfot. So she wasn't sitting on the Beit Din, right? That was something that men did, but she was the one who was teaching everybody what the halakha was, and sort of was determining what it was.
I don't know, but the pasuk calls her a shofetet, right?
Okay. Yeah. So that's why, to me, I see there's a bit of a dichotomy between Devorah, the character in Sefer Shoftim, and Devorah, the halakhic precedent, as the Rishonim are trying to figure out, what's a who's a judge, and who, right. So that, yeah. So there might be a divide there.
Mm-hmm.
So this Wednesday, you are starting a new 2-week series on forgiveness in the Talmud. So I'm excited for that to launch. Can you share a little bit about what you're going to be looking at and what sources and who should come to that? What type of person should come to the class?
I'll be teaching on an Agadata, which combines halakhic statements and teachings about forgiveness and the obligation to ask and also to grant forgiveness. And it weaves it with stories about how this was actually put into practice when students wronged teachers or friends wronged each other. How did they go about the reconciling and actually fulfilling kind of the technical requirements of what it means to forgive in halacha? I find it intriguing that there's actually a requirement to begin with, right? It seems like such a personal, interpersonal matter. Of what does it mean to feel wronged, to feel slighted, to be hurt, and how to find room for reconciliation. And yet the halacha has procedures of what you're supposed to do. So the Rambam actually lays out some of the things that you're supposed to do, and it comes in the context of course, Yom Kippur, right? And the mission teaches that the Day of Atonement, right, the Yom Kippur doesn't atone for sins between people. Right, ben adam lechavero, because transgressions between a person and their friend need to actually be solved in a relational way. So if you injure them, or if you curse them, or if you steal from them, you're not going to get absolution from Yom Kippur. Rather, you have to have restitution if you actually took something, or you have to ask for forgiveness. And there's this obligation. So if you offended your neighbor, says the Rambam, you're obligated to appease them and to implore to be forgiven by them. That's what the Rambam teaches. And so, but it's two-sided, right? If you're obligated to go and try 3 times in most situations. If it's between you and your teacher, you're supposed to go as many times as is necessary. And if your neighbor, if your friend refuses to forgive you, right? So there's this other obligation, right? If you're making an effort and you're showing real remorse and you're trying to appease your friend, then you bring an increasing amount of people. So first, 3 people, as serving as kind of like an impromptu Beit Din, to witness the fact that you're trying to go through this process of forgiveness, and the other side isn't giving, right? And it's kind of, but it's on the other hand, right? So it's witnessing the fact that you're doing all this and you're going through the whole process of actually trying to make amends. But on the other hand, it's also saying to it's also embarrassing the person, I suppose, right? The person who's asking for forgiveness and kind of replicating this experience of, right? It's putting you in the shoes of your friend when you wrong them. When you wrong someone, when you slight them, when you embarrass them, it hurts, right? And you can they feel embarrassed and they carry this emotional toll from it. And so the process of forgiveness for the person who did the wronging also kind of carries that replication of the hurt, kind of so that the person who wronged you can feel a little bit of that too, right? That you have to do it in front of 3 people and say, yeah, I did something bad, something not great that made someone feel not good.
This sounds kind of heavy. Why do I want to, come to a class about people wronging me and I wronged them? It's so heavy,
Thanks for the plug. Why does this intrigue me? Generally, I teach this class in the lead up to Yom Kippur, when people are kind of in the mood to think about these things. But I think in general, especially as we've kind of like in light of COVID, we've kind of lost touch of like the in-person give and take, right? And different niceties that we used to have, or kind of reading social cues. And I think we're all a little bit off our game in that sense. And what the sugya emphasizes for me is that obligation to kind of meet your friend face to face when you don't understand them, or when something has gone wrong between the two of you, right? That you kind of have to see each other and meet each other and try to understand the other person's experience, to empathize and to take on their perspective in this process. And I think that's something that that we all kind of need a little reassurance with, or support with in our current state. With all the separation, with the isolation, there's a lot of empathy that is needed. Actually, the term that the Gemara uses to appease is lemefak adata, to make the other person, the person you wronged perhaps, to go out of their own perspective. It literally means to go out of your mind, right? To forgive might be to, yeah, that's the kitschy thing that I do, right? So it literally means to go out of your mind, and that's what forgiveness can be, right? Is saying, like, the hurt is there, right? The wrong happened. It's acknowledging it and validating it, but you're called upon by the halacha to forgive. So we're kind of called upon in this process in halacha to take on each other's perspective, and I think that's crucial to us always, and perhaps now as we're kind of missing the element of human interaction a lot. Yeah.
Ooh, okay, that sounds okay.
You think it's heavy? You think it's too heavy?
It's
here's
heavy,
the fun part. Here's the
yeah.
fun part. There are all sorts of really interesting stories about people asking for forgiveness.
They're great stories. They're great stories. And
that'll be fun, right? So you just heard the take home, but like there's fun stuff like it's like the you know that scene in the Megillah where Haman's wife empties out empties out the trash on his head.
Yes, I think that's in Masechet Megillah, not in the Megillah itself.
Yeah, in Masechet Megillah, there you go.
Yes,
right,
yes.
So there's a reminiscent scene here where someone takes out the trash and it ends up on someone's head, and they're like, oh, me'ashpot yarim evyon, right? I think it's like they're taking all these interesting plays on what's my place in life. Like, when am I the center of the universe? When am I the center of the focus? And when can I say, actually, the world's bigger than me? My friend is doing a lot, right? Like, I deserve to be lowered in this moment, and like everyone has their time, and there's ebb and flow to life, and I don't know. I think it's these really interesting stories that connect us to the rabbis a long time ago who went through these processes.
Yeah, that's right. The stories are great. The stories of forgiveness in the Talmud are amazing. Those are amazing stories. Those are like really they're fun stories. And
there's one about a butcher. Very, very, it's really interesting, but also kind of violent.
Compelling stories. Those are great stories. Yes, these are great stories. Absolutely, and we're learning, I guess, in sort of learning about these practices where we're like re-engaging in what it means to be part of a society, to live with other people, and they offend you, you offend them, and we gotta figure out ways to get over that. So, okay, that seems like good tools for living. All right.
I think it's always relevant. I'm sorry if you thought it was a little too heavy. Sometimes
I never said too. Heavy. I never said too heavy. I just said heavy. heavy.
Okay.
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 Being very precise. Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Okay.
The shiur is for everyone. Please come learn. We'll learn the text and translation. I think it'll be fruitful fodder for thought, for discussion.
Great. So it'll be on Zoom this Wednesday and the following Wednesday, and it'll be recorded on YouTube if you don't get to participate. I mean, it's really nice to participate live. I think it adds a lot of energy for the teacher to have people participating live and asking questions and engaged and nodding along on Zoom is like really, really helpful for teachers. But then it's on YouTube, so you can watch it later if that timing works out better for you.
Also true.
Since we've closed, we've sort of taken a couple of weeks of pause for Shalashidus and other indoor eating at the shul. We've been learning Torah between Mincha and Marav for now 2 weeks. I've been reading through with a group of people in the shul a passage from Harei Kedem, which is a really fun 3-volume sefer of Rav Soloveitchik's Chidushei Torah, his ideas, his like insights and creative frameworks and understandings of various halakhic topics, as written up by one of his students, Rabbi Shurin, who sat in his class for 10 years and then has been publishing these books. So we looked at the interaction of pikuach nefesh and Shabbat, the restrictions of Shabbat when they come in conflict with pikuach nefesh. The big overarching question that I'd say we're sort of thinking through is whether the laws of Shabbat are entirely undone and made permissible in the context of threat to human life, and the other possibilities, maybe the laws of Shabbat are merely overridden pushed away by the threat to human life, but they remain there. They're still values. They're still there. It's still a presence. It's just something else is more important. Okay, and we're trying to figure out, are there any like real practical differences, and what might they be based on these perspectives? One, I'm not gonna try to summarize.
No, in general, right? The practical difference would be if it's permitted, if it's just entirely not applicable, and we say don't think about it as you go about whatever you need to do in order to save that person's life. Whereas if it's just pushed aside, we're going to be thinking, okay, how much do I want to push aside, right? What am I willing to transgress and what am I not? And I think a little more. Was that not one of the main nafkaminas?
Yes, I'm sorry. That would be. I think that nafkamina, though, is maybe it's hard to figure. I've struggled to find an actual practical. It's hard to identify the practical situations where you would do something differently, because
right.
Okay, well, if it's if I'm driving someone to the hospital, do I use my turn signals? Right? Maybe I only drive because I have to get to the hospital. But anything extraneous I should avoid doing. But of course you're going to turn your because it's just reckless to drive without using your turn signals, and even the mental energy to this is an empty street. I don't have to use my turn signal this time, so I'm going to not do it because it's shot. You shouldn't be wasting your brain cells on that kind of thought when you're rushing somebody to the hospital in an emergency situation, right? So it's hard to
do anything to save a life. Yes.
Yeah. So one idea that we encountered as one sort of piece, one building block of this sort of structure that Rosh Soloveitchik is sort of constructing in these shiurim is a position of the Minchat Chinuch, a 19th century piece of scholarship, who says that if you do half of a malacha on one Shabbos and you finish it the second Shabbos, you're actually chayav. You're guilty. You're liable for breaking Shabbos, which I think is just I've been really enjoying that position and sort of its implications and what that might mean. Right? If you write, the minimal, what you're not allowed to write on Shabbat. So the minimal threshold for writing that would, trigger a punishment or consequences would be writing 2 letters. So if you write 1 letter on one Shabbos and the following Shabbos you write a second letter, so Minchat Chinuch says that would be chayav because you completed a malacha on Shabbos, even though you started at the right. If you write 1 letter before Shabbos and you write the second letter on Shabbos, you're exempt. You didn't do the labor on Shabbos. But if you do it one Shabbos and you wait a week and you do the second letter, you are chayav because somehow, at least maybe or whatever, that all the Shabbos in the world are kind of in time are linked in some way. It's all one unit of sanctity, and they can combine in this way, which you carry
the Shabbat dimension, right? That we enter.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool. I'm trying to think of other malachot you could do half and half. Yeah, probably any of them you could do half of one Shabbos if you.
You carry 2 amot in Reshut HaRabim, and then you carry another 2 amot.
Yeah. You pick something up on one Shabbos and you walk, and then you wait, a week, and then you put it down. I mean, that would be because you'd have to keep moving. It'd be very hard to pull that off. But
no, you put
the
it
writing
down.
One is pretty.
You put it down and you come back.
Yes. Yeah. What are you doing in between that, right? Because once you stand still, that's a hanacha, that's putting down, right?
You've done akira hanacha, but you've done only 2 amot.
Right, but then that's not. How would you complete that malacha? I guess you pick it up again maybe next Shabbos.
You do another akira and hanacha. You do, right? No.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah,
no, but the other really interesting nafkamina was to say, right, if you have a course of treatment, right, that's going to take 7. Was it the one with 8 days?
Well, it was 6 days versus 8 days, right? You have a 6 day course
versus
of treatment.
8 days.
Yeah, that was sort of a trigger for this, right?
That was really interesting.
Yeah, course of treatment. That's 8 day course of treatment. You don't wait till Shabbos to end to start the 8 day course of treatment because you could say, well, Shabbos is over in 3 hours. We'll start the chemo or we'll start the whatever it is, tonight, and then I'll only have to, in 3 hours from now or 1 hour from now when Shabbos is over, and then I'll only have to break one Shabbos in 7 days. So it's an 8 day course of treatment. So the halakha says, no, you don't wait at all. You just start right away. And whereas if it's a 6 day course of treatment, if there's going to be no adverse effect of delaying a couple hours, you say, no, wait till after Shabbos to start the 6 day course of treatment, and then you'll avoid violating Shabbos at all. And so somehow, if it's choices between violating one Shabbos versus 2 Shabbatot, there's no value in delay. Whereas if the choice is between no Shabbos being violated and 1 Shabbos being violated, it seems there is a value in being delayed. And that was maybe answered by this position in the Mincha Chinuch of like all the Shabbatot in the world in history combining into one unit of Shabbos, right? So once Shabbos is being violated, it has to, because it's an 8-day course of treatment, then once, twice, 3 times it makes no difference. Whereas if it's wherever you can avoid it altogether, it seems that's something that we would go for if it's not going to have any adverse effects. So I don't know. So it's really, I find this stuff really interesting and really fun. It looks like we're going to have at least another week with before we start Shiloh Shuddah. So hopefully we can continue on. And even if you haven't, been learning with us, we'll try to make it accessible. You can just jump right in.
The poll that we would put to our audience, I guess, right, is what's the bigger benefit of having had to cancel, Kiddush? Is it learning Harei Kedem or getting Cholent to go? Okay, audience poll. So write in, guys.
Shul has been strange the last few weeks with these.
But the Cholent to go is strong.
Cholent to go is great.
And it turns out people will still socialize on the steps of the shul in 15-degree weather. In
15-degree weather. Yeah, 15 is not so bad. 15-degree weather is not so bad.
Oh, my goodness. That's what I learned about kids this week at Mishnah Club, is that they will eat pizza outside in 15-degree weather. So
that was surprising to me.
I asked them. I gave them a choice of to go, or they were like, nope. That was surprising. Chicago kids.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Builds character. So Daf Yomi next week is this week Daf Yomi is starting Masechet Moed Katan, which is a Masechet I guess neither of us have ever learned through before, other than maybe passages and stuff, and so that's exciting. And it's mostly about Avelut, right? It's about the laws of mourning. So all the Shiva, Shloshim, and the 12 months, and all the different stages of mourning are discussed, and I think that's a value. Maybe 3 years ago, there was a class that
Rabbanit Sarna taught, right?
I believe so. Maybe I taught one of them. It was a series. I don't know. It was like things that maybe she taught all of them. I don't remember. But it was, things that you never learned in school, but you should have. And one of the weeks was Avelut, the laws of mourning, because it's in most cases, people don't encounter the laws of mourning and the customs of mourning and studying them, and until it's too late, right? Until, God forbid, there's somebody who's dead, and then they have to right away figure out and make all these decisions, and Aninut and Shiva and Shloshim and all of these restrictions are upon them, and they don't necessarily have the wherewithal or the time or the focus to learn what to do. And I think there's so much psychological wisdom inherent in the laws and customs of mourning that this bracketing for a minute, we want to do mitzvot well, and we, which I encourage, and I think it's, there's it's great, like mitzvot a noble life, and, it's a good thing to do mitzvot carefully, et cetera, just bracketing all of that. I just think there's a tremendous, tremendous psychological benefit from, careful and thorough mourning practices, especially as, as halakha mandates of going from more extreme to less extreme, with sort of being gradually reintroduced into society and into social life, and all of those stages. There's a lot of psychological wisdom there that, it's your birthright as a Jew to avail yourself of this guidance and inherent in these mourning practices. And I just, it's a little bit of preparation and being familiar with them in advance makes it more likely and more easy for you to do it when it's necessary, which isn't necessarily something you get advance notice when it's going to be necessary. So I would recommend it. So anyway, Daf Yomi, there's, the next couple of weeks really, even if you're not committing to learning Daf Yomi every day for 7 years, you could learn Daf Yomi every day for a couple of weeks, and you'll get, Moed Katan under your belt and have exposure to these really important mitzvot.
Yeah, and how quickly can you do a siyum on Moed Katan? It's another one of those masechtot that you can.
It's maybe 15 daf or something.
Yeah,
like that.
So that's also a good plug.
Yeah, I do feel sorry. Somebody who people who started Daf Yomi in the last couple months, they're this is so great, all these really famous stories, and you finish a masechet every couple of weeks, and you get a little siyum party. It's this is great. We're just checking off boxes, and I'm finishing masechet left and right. This is great, and then over the horizon there is Masechet Yevamot is looming. It's this whatever, menacing. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It might not definitely be great.
It's not menacing. It just involves a lot of charts.
A lot of charts. Yevamot is about very intricate family relationships, and so you need a chart. If you have a chart, you can figure it out. You just need to get one of those. Need charts. That's all. Family trees. That's it.